We are going live. We are going live. We are live. And good. I think it's still good morning. Let's just play a jingle to take us across to 12 midday. Aye, we here. Look, welcome officially to Tech Power Talk. This is the first day we are broadcasting, as you know, 1st of February 2020. It is a talk show. It is nothing else but a talk show. We are a platform to be able to engage with different people constructively, and hopefully, not only constructively, but we need to be positive and look at the future in a positive way and ensure that the people that think that it's a difficult space being in the ICT space is that wall is removed and everyone can see that it's an achievable thing being part of this 4IR era. It's an exciting period, but as we're going to hear from you, there are challenges in the ICT space. The more you get advanced, the more there's speed in terms of bandwidth, the more there are criminals and crooks exploit that advancement. And we're going to hear from you. And for people who don't know who Rodney is, Rodney Koch, if I mention his surname incorrectly, I will owe him a cow. So Rod has been in the ICT space for over 20 years. So it's 20 plus. I'm not going to mention the plus so that you don't think that we're not part of the millennium or Z generation. Me and him, we're still part of the millennium, depending where we are, or Z generation. On a lighter note. So he's been there. He has worked for multinationals. He has worked for organizations. He has served for his country patronage or being love his country. He has even served in government as a CIO. We will touch that as we go. So this is a person who is a professional in the space, who understands the space very well, who's going to impart knowledge that he's got about the space, but with a special focus on cybersecurity. Rod, let me hand it over that to you.
Thank you very much, Sonaba. Much appreciated. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Yes, it's just after 12 midday, 3 minutes after 12. So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for your time. If you're listening in, you can actually have this on YouTube or on Facebook. And it is a live stream on our radio channel as well. Yes, as Sonaba said, I've been in the industry for a very long time. I've enjoyed it, both in the private and in the public sector. And I think it's imperative and it's important as an advisor to the PITA board. One of the subjects that I want to talk about today is cybersecurity. Cybersecurity, cyber awareness, cyber skills, cyber mitigation, cyber threats, and all of those that goes alongside with it. I'm going to share with you some information with regards to the attacks, the attack pathway, how you as a company or as a person or as an individual can mitigate those strategies. What are some of the least privileges that you can do as fundamentals, and where you actually have some of the attack scenarios and how you can actually avoid some of those environments. We in South Africa actually had the Interpol Cyber Assessment Report released in October last year, 2021, which actually painted a very bleak picture for us. But I will get to that at a later stage. Let me just flip through here just to share with you some of the things that has happened globally on a global scale in respect to cybersecurity and cyber threats and ransomware. For everyone that ever had a Yahoo account, your account was hacked. 3 billion people in all, their account was hacked, of every single Yahoo account. It's crazy. Verizon, if you look at SolarWinds, if you look at CBS News, if you look at South Africa coming closer to home, if you look at our banking industry, if you look at our infrastructure industry, if you look at Meridian was a very good example that was hit twice. Ransomware is a serious problem. It is something that is new. It's on the horizon. It's alive and it's well. We've just covered from a silly season, which was obviously the December break. We went through COVID. We went through a pandemic. We went through lockdown. We went through lifestyle changes, work changes, etc. But the fact of the matter is it increased and accelerated the process of cyber attacks. We're under cyber attacks every single day of our lives, all the time, whether you have a credit card, whether you have a mortgage, whether you have a cell phone, etc. There are ways that you can protect yourself, and hence we need to just be a little bit more aware of the cybersecurity in there. Let's quickly step back a little bit and say, where does most of these attacks actually happen? Believe it or not, at the endpoints. The endpoints is the places where a lot of people actually come through, and they use things such as phishing, not phishing, but PHISING, that type of phishing, where they send you that looks like a legitimate email from your bank or from your retail store card or from a colleague sitting next to you. Or the old method is where you actually use access cards to gain access into the company, and that access card actually has a chip technology into it that also gives you access to certain files. And if you say, please hold the door, I left my card at home, or I left my card on my desk, that is actually a breach that you're creating in the system. So your endpoint has thus been breached. So the attackers, they normally wait for that particular short space where somebody actually receives an email and they say you have won 500 points from your cell phone provider, or you have free data, or there's a nice prize out that we're giving because you've been a good customer. The minute you click onto that, the minute you open that, you are actually exposing the entire company. Not just yourself, you're exposing the entire company. So what these attackers are looking for, they're looking for what we call a vulnerable user. A user that they could actually gain access into at a very easy access point. A user that has got the same password for everything. And you know, if you actually look at a password, if you have a password of numbers only, 4 numbers, your password can be cracked instantly. If you have a password with 4 numbers and 1 lowercase character, it can be cracked instantly. If you have a password with 5, 6, 7, it can be cracked within 25 seconds. If you have a password that has got 9 characters, numbers, uppercase, lowercase, and a special character, it'll take them 8 hours to crack your password. If you have a password of 12 characters with numbers, lowercase, uppercase, and lowercase, special character, it will take them 34 years to crack your passcode. So be very careful not to be that vulnerable user that uses the same password for everything and for every access, a one-to-many relationship. You have to, and some companies are now introducing policies whereby you are forced to change your password every 30 days. In some instances, every 15 days. So what the hackers normally do, they wait for that vulnerable user, and once they're inside, there's 2 things that they do. They have a lateral movement from the endpoints, they go towards the infrastructure. Once they're inside, they change the admin rights. And if you change the admin rights, you can cause a whole lot of damage. And also what they do, once they have actually to the admin rights, they switch off the firewall, the antivirus, and all of the protection methods and layers that you as the system has put in place is thus changed. And that's how they actually create chaos within your system, because they've gained access through that phishing email or that malware or that SMS that you received or that prize that you thought you won on your mobile phone, and you accepted on that. That is very important. Everyone is a target. Everyone is a target. Ransomware is one of the most concerning cybersecurity threats today. Did you know South Africa is only the second country globally outside of Russia that has got more botnet and unique IP addresses that cyber criminals use to actually set up and lure people in? South Africa is very high on that regard. We annually in South Africa spend a total of about $3.2 million. We're the highest in the Southern Hemisphere in terms of cyber attacks and ransomware. Admin users, it's very important that your system is changed regularly. Change the system's configuration, install the malware, and make sure you monitor and control the access of all your users. Know who gets onto your Wi-Fi. Know who has access to particular files, particular application, and do a register so that you know exactly if somebody is in the training room, can they have access into the important or the critical data sets that you have onto your system. And in some instances, you'll find somebody sitting in the parking of a company. They connect onto the Wi-Fi and they maybe have the access card, or they have some information, or they know somebody's name. They can actually say, by the way, Patricia is maybe the executive assistant for the CFO. And he would say, Patricia, I am in the meeting right now with your CFO, whatever his name is. He needs particular access and some files, or he wants to send some gifts, or he wants to be able to look at a certain document. Please just pass this on to me. And 9 out of 10 times, the vulnerable user accedes to that. Least privilege. Prevent attacks that start at the endpoint by removing the local admin rights, such as remote workstations. And we are all in that position right now. A lot of people are working from home. You know, the banks and the retail stores during the pandemic preferred the remote working solution. There was a lot of setups, remote setups, Wi-Fi's, data was increased, etc. But it also exposed, and your risk posture has thus increased. So look at your least privilege by removing any administration rights at your workstations or any servers or any Macs or any smartphones. Give them enough rights in order for them to do their job. Application control. Allow IT operations and security teams to allow approved application while restricting unapproved ones. That means always know who is on the system, who are the approved users, who are the unapproved users, and obviously make sure you have proper and full application control in that respect. And in that, you can actually set up what we call an endpoint privilege manager application control. This will allow only approved applications to run while blocking malware, including ransomware. Unknown applications are run in what we call restricted mode, which prevents them from accessing corporate resources, sensitive data, or the internet. And the same application control is what we call an application risk analysis. It's a service that provides additional insights about the risk. Trust business requirements such as SCCM, updaters, URLs, and more. We know you need to do regular update, malware training, phishing training. Don't agree or accept a site if it's just HTTP, but no S. The S means secure. HTTP:// and then the link is the danger. Be very careful, be smart, look around it and see what it is. And there are what we call advanced threat protection against ransomware attacks. There's the sandbox approach. Threat is isolated if it's detected. Suspicious activity actually has a signature towards that, so you know where is it coming from in terms of the IP address. You actually share that suspicious looking IP address or suspicious threat across your estate so people around you can know, by the way, there's a malware called Rake or Cynical that is coming through. You improve your security posture and it also reduces your risk. A big important point to note, and there are 5 main areas when you actually look at your malware. What are the type of things that you have to do to keep pace with attacks and volumes of attacks? Keep pace through machine learning and AI. We all know way back then when City of Johannesburg says your itemized billing or your monthly billing will actually now be in a new artificial intelligence or machine learning code, but nobody told them that, you know, the success of this will also be your downfall because not enough security was implemented in that whole environment. So the context of security and the machine learning analysis data is there to detect malicious threats in many different ways, including finding threats for existing public sector environment. Zero trust networks. Employees may not have the appropriate security settings, but you also need to do the non-IT approved applications. Zero trust network is a security model that means anyone trying to access your organization resources is required to provide strict identity verification each and every time. I'll say that again. Zero trust networks. Zero trust networks is a security model that means anyone trying to access your organization's resources is required to provide strict identity verification each and every time. Very important. MPLS networks and SD-WAN is very strong. It's very widely used, especially within the global context and also within South Africa. So maintain connectivity, maintain visibility, and obviously making sure if you have a multi-vendor environment, it can become somehow a little bit problematic. Be aware of that. I'm going to pause there for a while, Sonabo. If there's perhaps, I know that you have a list of questions and queries that you raised with me, but I'm just going to pause there if there's anything that you maybe want to just unpack a little bit. I did have an area that I thought maybe I should maybe just touch on, that the CIOs of today compared to the CIOs of the 2000. What is the difference between the two? You know, maybe I must just share some information on that, because in today's term, you get a CTO and a CIO, a Chief Technology Officer. Then you get a CSO, a Chief Security Officer, and a CIO. Then you get a CSO, which is a Chief Strategy Officer, and a CIO. So let me put that into context. Our CIOs of today are what we call a more effective salesperson. So he or she is actually somebody that has to sell the value of the ICT unit or department within the corporation. Many years ago, and in some instances, it's still true today, that the ICT department reports into the finance department, or they call it corporate services. So in other words, your CIO and his entire staff is then looked on as a cost center. Wrong. It actually should change. And our government has actually put through the Jito Council many years ago a cabinet mandate that the CIO of each government department should be at a certain level where he or she can actually make decisions. So they should be at DDG level where they can actually make certain decisions in relation to the strategic outlook of the department. They must build a trusted relationship with the CEO or the DG in that space, if it's from government side. They must share the strategic vision. That's the current CIO. They must get support from the CEO or his upper supervisory COOs to foster the process. And the CIO is responsible to communicate the internal and external message to the stakeholders. So it's important that we understand that the CIO of today, he or she has a top responsibility to be able to lead and protect the company in that respect. So I just thought I'd just share that because it's important, instead of being a cost center, being a revenue generating unit. And how does small SMEs companies integrate in the new ICT innovation, in terms of centralized services? Those type of environments and situations are crucial for our discussions. I'll pause there for a moment, Sunabo, and allow you to actually just...
Thank you for now, Rod. I think just to, I'm going to play a jingle for people who... Yeah, we're back. Rod, tell me something. I need to ask you a question. With your experience, why in South Africa, when most countries have got a cybersecurity center, why we don't have it in South Africa?
Very good question, Sunabo. You'll know that the Middle East and especially the UAE, they have top-notch, fully skilled and highly qualified cybersecurity center. The challenge actually comes for South Africa is that we only had our cybersecurity bill pass about 6 months ago. It has been in the making for a long, long while. It has always been there, but it was always either a white paper or a blue paper or a lechotla or a discussion around it, but only. And in alignment with that, you also know that the POPIA Act, the Protection of Personal Information Act, was also only signed about 6 months ago. It was only done in 2021, although it has been a discussion for a very long time. I am not passing the buck to our stakeholders or our policyholders in terms of the government and the policymakers. However, I'm saying it has caused a delay because in many instances, there's certain legislation that has to pass first through before it can be promulgated and it can be enacted upon. Like our cybersecurity bill and our POPIA Act, once it was actually signed in, we had corporations and companies having their systems breached purely because, number one, it gave those criminals and cyber criminals such a long time to prepare and do what they had to do. So we have a big lack of that. However, now that we have our cybersecurity bill signed into law, it is now the execution thereof. And this requires the policymakers, the NGOs, the corporates, the universities, every aspect and all stakeholders, such as the Centex and the AXAs, the CITAs of this world, etc. All of those government entities, even the National Information Regulator, to be a part of this whole environment. So there is a huge and an enormous task on our Minister of Post and Telecommunications and what we call digital information technology in order to actually bring together. There is the Presidential 4IR committee. It's been on for more than a year. There are many other instances and communities that are actually actively working, but we still haven't gone where the tire meets the road and we really enact on what is actually engrossed and engrafted in that document. So my simple answer to that is it's a long delay purely because of our policyholders and also because some of the stakeholders, there seems to be a serious lack thereof. However, I'm glad that we at least crossed the hurdle of having a bill in Parliament now.
But again, I'm going to ask you a follow-up question on that. Now that the bill has been passed, right? We've got a shortage of ICT skills, and I'm going to call it ICT rather than saying IT skills. We've got a shortage already of IT skills or ICT skills in South Africa and many countries in Africa and the rest of the world.
Yep.
Where are we going to get these skills to put together the necessary strategy and implementation plan for implementing things like cybersecurity centers in South Africa?
Very important question, and a very wise decision to ask, especially around the cybersecurity discussion. We do have a serious lack of skills, but the whole digitization and the digital world creates an opportunity. Now let's look it in the eye and call a spade a spade. The full automation and the digital world, or the whole exploration towards digitization, does come at the sacrifice of jobs. It's not the high-end jobs, but rather the low-end type of jobs, where the menial task or the low-skill task is taken over by robotics or by machine learning or by some digital tool that can do that particular task. However, on the flip side of that, there is also a 40% increase in terms of job employment because there's the upskilling phase. So those members that are actually in the middle tier or the upper tier in terms of the whole digital cloud to journey, Internet of Things, etc., they do the reskilling. So now the process is a little bit shorter. So my return of investment for a company that's thinking of moving to digital world, they don't spend too much time on the whole business processing cost because it is digitized, it is renewed, and it's very innovative. Coming back to your question, then what sort of skills do we need? Let me give you the top skills in demand, not only in South Africa, but I'm going to be specific about South Africa, but to other countries or other parts of the world, including Africa. Developers, data scientists, Python developer, Java developer, JavaScript developer, cloud engineer, Scrum master. A Scrum master that can understand how to do a full business analysis task at a company. If you're a business analyst, you need to understand, I need to build a business specification, an infrastructure specification, a technical specification. I need to know the who, the why, the how, the when, and etc. That is the Scrum master, be it agile or be it waterfall. The DevOps engineer, cloud skills, software development, AI and machine learning, project management, believe it or not, that is a skill that is highly sought after, whether it's Prince, whether it's PMBOK, whatever other PMP, whatever other skill it is, but project management is a serious environment. And then not last, but by no means least, is what we call IT service management. In South Africa, companies are tinkering, not at a massive pace, but are tinkering with the idea of moving to the cloud. So the skills base that they currently have, they need to revisit and look at that. But then there's the area of what we call service management or management outsourcing. What our corporations are looking towards, is it going to be a PaaS, platform as a service, or is it going to be SaaS, software as a service, or is it going to be IaaS, infrastructure as a service? What most companies in South Africa are leaning towards is a PaaS, journey to cloud option. In other words, they still want to maintain control of the applications and of their data. Everything else must be the PaaS vendors, the refresh, the maintenance, the service license, etc., etc. Let the PaaS vendor deal with that. So hence, that's the reason why I say the most in-demand skills that we have, and it's not just in South Africa, it's a global phenomenon, but we need to actually get to that level. And a lot of companies are now doing online training, especially during the COVID. They actually put online training where they say, between the next 30 days or the next 3 months, you should actually finish these online courses. They build this into employees' PDPs, their personal development plan, to make sure that we can get to those artificial intelligence guys, those analytical reasoning, the affiliated marketing, the sales guy, the scientific computing, the blockchain. Those are the skills that are of high demand, sought after. Can I just mention one more thing? Our
One more thing,
universities
please.
and educational institutions needs to come on board. It's no use still doing basic and PL1 and Pascal and some of those old programming languages. You must rather focus towards more the artificial intelligence, get involved in blockchain, do the machine learning, and very slowly and gradually bring into the fold of the students' curriculum things that they can use once they leave or graduate from university, are able to be active and aggressively enter the job market with those skills.
Thank you. It's like you read my mind. I'm getting very worried now because you're a technology person. I was just going to ask you that question about the institutions, educational institutions. And for me, and I'm not going to mention the institution, there's a young man who was sitting in the rural areas with a degree since 2019. We Piker engaged with this individual. Fast forward, I convinced this young man to convert from a networking person to a cyber person, to a young man with cybersecurity skills. Between November and December, he did three training courses through Python. Do you know that in January, he got an internship offer in Johannesburg, all the way from the Transkei, Bundu areas. He's doing his internship now in cybersecurity.
Oh, marvelous.
Now the question is, why these institutions are not accelerating offering these children as part of the curriculum, cyber security courses, Python that you've mentioned, IoT that you've mentioned, because these courses are available. Why must these children still do 1940 IT, courses? So I hear you, but I think it's something that we need to revisit, because I know you sit on the board of Rhodes University. We need you to come back and answer some questions and use your institution as a benchmark to other institutions and say how different it is, because they've got people like you who really understands the industry needs. So anyway.
Yes. No, let me answer that. Thank you very much for that. That's a very, very important question. Just with regards to Rhodes University, yes, thank you very much. I've been sitting on that board for a number of years. It's led by Professor Stephen Flowerday, probably one of the top cybersecurity experts we have in the country. And Rhodes University over the years has changed dramatically in terms of their offerings from year 1 up until year 3, and also their honors in respect of how do they tune, train, skill, and guide those students to actually be very active. We also, as the board, have a very aggressive and active engagement in the corporate world with many of the multinationals and South African-based companies, where we actually have the internship program. So we actually send our students over to those institutions and corporations to go and spend some time with them so that they can get some what we call take a student to work experience. And they come back, and by the time when they finish with their courses, they really feel jacked up, and they really obviously feel that they can add value in that respect. Let me come back to our institutions. I just want to make a comment around that. One of the most advanced, let's put it, South Africa is what we call a developing country. They consider us as a developing nation. So is countries such as Malaysia and Turkey, and some of those other, not the first world countries, but they consider us to be third world. But in many instances, we are really not third world, because we accelerate in terms of our finance and our mobile and our growth in terms of telco, etc., etc. Be it as it may, those countries spend an enormous amount of money and research and resources on what they call technical universities. especially during this time when a lot of kids receive their results. There are hundreds and maybe thousands of kids that did not get a university or what we call a bachelor's pass. Those kids are the ones that we could actually get into our TVT colleges. They can get into our colleges, they call it technical and vocational training colleges that are scattered around the country. And this is an area where people such as you and me and the platform that is Pita on to engage with our Minister of Higher Education, engage with some of our principals out there to say, let us introduce these areas, whether the boy or the girl wants to be a plumber, a fitter, a turner, a welder, etc. Eventually, the area of machine learning, artificial intelligence, CAD programming, etc., will gradually infiltrate into their day-to-day tasking. Be it a plumber, be it a builder, be it a welder, be it an engineer, be it a bridge builder, whatever it is, those technical and vocational training centers needs to change. And I'm not 100% familiar with some of the offerings or the curriculums in there. Maybe this is a discussion for another time where we can invite some of the experts in this area to see how we can very slowly bring those skills that are in high demand in our country into those environments for those students that just has a diploma or a matric pass, where he or she can in 2 or 3 years put a 24-month or 36-month program in order to become a cloud engineer or a scrum master or any one of those environments. I know that the maths and science is involved in there, but I'm looking more at the technical aspect where you can actually bring the machine learning and the artificial intelligence into play in the curriculum.
Thank you, Rod. Maybe I must make you aware as an advisor to Pita. Last year, if I've not mentioned to you, last year from September to December, we have trained for free, 0 rated, just under 100 youth in cybersecurity and Python. Okay. This year we've started with 46 with one institution that we've partnered with, and we've partnered in 78 with another institution. Okay. And I think it's important for us. It's a challenge for if government people were to listen to this YouTube or Facebook download, that you come back to the platform. Maybe we must invite some government people to come and answer why don't we go that route that you're suggesting, that these children must be put into a technical college and they need look, I think I must say this before, Rod. It does not mean because a child did not get a bachelor's pass that the child is not brilliant. Our education system has not been structured properly. Not every child is going to be interested in history and geography. But once you put the child in front of a computer, you might see a different child. So maybe we need to have that discussion as we go forward. But as well, I think let's go back. You are aware that organizations which are government owned, like .ZNA, they are pushing that everyone must have at school level, they must have email addresses. Now, on internet governance in issues which cybersecurity fits in, how do you think and what's your advice on rolling out cyber awareness at schools? Not for making money, but it must be done by people, organizations that have got a passion of imparting this critical knowledge and ensuring that these children, as they connect on their phones and they use emails going forward, they are aware of what can happen. I know you've talked about endpoint devices, but I just want you to touch again on, now that we are trying to push to have everyone to have domains. There's a lot of people that are going to fall short of securing themselves. What must we do?
Absolutely, I agree with that. And it is a big phenomenon. Number one, we don't want our kids to be left behind. a lot of schools, different types of schools, public schools, private schools, government schools, different sets of schools, they do accommodate those aspects and actually have the kids introduced in some computer-aided training or some format of, look at it this way. South Africa is the 5th fastest cell phone per capita country globally. Most people in our country have 1.5 or 2 cell phones. We are a population of 60 million people. There are a lot of cell phones going around. There's a lot of data that is being used. It is obviously an important aspect. I know we're struggling with regards to 5G, and I know that we also have the spectrum release, and I know that we also have some serious challenges around other areas, but yet South Africa is hungry. It is an innovative country. It is progressive. It is keen to know, and our kids are actually excited about that. Most kids have Facebook. Some kids, 13, 12, 11-year-old, has Twitter accounts, etc., etc. But it's important that we actually understand there's also the danger around that. Outside of the security, there's also the society well-being. And you know the case about Facebook, where they actually last year sometime brought the entire Facebook down, and they said it was maintenance that they had to do. It wasn't maintenance. We all know, it's public knowledge, that it was obviously where they decided, hang on, that happened actually in the 5th of October 2021, when a whistleblower actually came forward. Her name was Frances Hogan, and I'm not saying this out of my thumbsuck. This is fact. You can go and check it out on CBS 90 Minutes, where she says Facebook was not created with the intention to harm, but to exploit, and tapping into anger, outrage, and emotions, and kept users on the platform longer because then I can sell advertising space. There's that danger. Then there's also the danger of cybersecurity, young boys and girls, where they actually use it for exploitation. So there has to be some ways, and this is the area where we, as subject matter experts, can engage with our stakeholders and our tertiary educations at school, college, technicon, and university level, and actually share and engage and equip them with the necessary skills to be on the lookout for things such as phishing, malware, sexual, digital extortion. This is a real thing that's happening out there. We all know what happened, and it's public news, what had happened. This girlfriend of this very prominent soccer player in the United Kingdom, where she actually recorded a case of extortion and abuse. It's alleged, it's not confirmed. So I'm saying social networks played an important part in that particular role. So we have to protect our kids at school, at home, with their friends, in the restaurants, in the coffee shops, wherever they are, from the exploitation of the digital world, because there are some dangers associated with that.
Look, from our side, we've started engaging with schools in the rural areas to impart, to do awareness on cybersecurity for people who are not aware. And we are basically offering training on cybersecurity online for free, as I've said. I think Rod, if you've got any other thing that you want to share, if there's nothing, I would like you just 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Let's look at again what mitigation strategies can companies and institutions implement to combat cyber attacks. Before you tackle that, for some reason, and I'm going to ask you, and this is me, you know me, you left out justice that was hit by cyber criminals sometime last year.
Yes. Just before I get to that,
I don't want justice to follow you.
But let me just comment on that. Oh yes, I've left out deliberately a lot of companies that were hit by cyber criminals last year and the year before. You know, and I'm not going to call them by names. The report is out there, not a Rodney report. It's an Interpol report. It's called the Cyber Assessment Report for Africa, October 2021. It's available. If anybody would like to have access to the report, we can actually engage with you and share with you that report if you connect through to Paita at Paita's email address or at Paita's link. But we can share that report with you. But just coming back to the Department of Justice, yes, Department of Justice, even up until today, the systems are down. And you know where the system's down? When you want to have a letter, when you do maintenance court, when you want to do court appearances, all of those things, their phone and their emails has been down for a long time. They were hit by a cyber attack, by ransomware, and the system has been crippled. Just to give you another example, Transnet was hit as well last year. You know, everybody knows about it, the logistics, the retailers, the store owners, the supply chain managers and supply chain store professionals and people, they were hit because it caused massive delays in the system. And Transnet called it a force majeure. And according to insurance terminology, a force majeure is an act of God. That was not an act of God. That was a malicious attack on one of our national key points, which is our logistics and our Transnet railway in this country.
Maybe cybersecurity now is a force of God problem.
All right.
On a serious note, okay.
Just before we get to that, with those points that you've raised, I want to also just mention that there are companies, local multinational companies or multinational companies with representation in this country. And with your permission, there's the Howies, there's the Software AGs, there's the DVR, there's the Microsoft. There are a few companies in this country that are currently offering training available to students and graduates where they can actually take them through this process of our new digital world. It's their certification program. They can go through this whole process, and there are companies that are willing and prepared, that are committed to the cause of this country and the longevity of our corporate world, where they actually, at their own costs, train our youngsters, our graduates, our unemployed graduates, our unemployed youths, our matriculants that can't find a job, take them through that process for a 60-day or a 3-month or a 6-month or a 9-month, and give them a certification. And 9 out of 10 times, they offer them employment, or they make them more marketable for employment. Yes. So we mustn't forget that.
Just before, this will be an injustice for Paita. Cisco offers training as well. You didn't mention Cisco.
Absolutely. Cisco offers training as well.
Paita is a Cisco Academy partner.
Fantastic.
It's the only OEM that when we approached, were flexible and had an understanding of where Paita wants to go, and they partnered with us. Few months in our existence. Okay?
I am sure there are many other multinationals that are listening in, some of the representatives or employees of those companies. I apologize if I didn't mention your name, but you know who you are. We will have another platform where we will extend an invitation for some of those people to put their money where their mouths are. And I know some of them have already done so. Like I mentioned, the Ciscos and the Howies and the Software AGs and the IBMs and the Microsofts and the Oracles, etc., etc. Some of the BCX and some of our systems integrators like the Dimension Datas, they are there, they are prepared, they are willing, they are ready, they are eager, and they are committed to the cause of this, because they realize the danger that we are all in if they do not get on board with the re-engineering of our youth, the re-engineering of our landscape, and moving on our journey to this whole digitization. But let me respond to some of those questions that you ask in terms of what mitigating strategies or combat we can use for the cyber attacks. Number one, it hasn't hit our shores as yet, but this is a discussion that we will probably involve the FSI partners, such as our banking and insurance homes, where we actually say, how can we insure a corporate against a cyber attack by taking out insurance? It's like my car. What can I do Are the companies or corporates right now ready or mature enough to actually sell me a premium where they will ensure, in the event if I get hit by a cyber attack, all of that is covered? But let me just come back to some of the mitigating strategies before I'm rattling the cage now of the insurance industry and the financial institutions, but that is a subject that we can have at another time. Use antivirus with EDR or XDR. In other words, endpoint detection response or extended detection response. So detect and investigate threats at endpoint, break the silos of traditional threat detection and respond with visibility across your networks. Backups. Keep doing your backup. Keep doing your backup and take your backup off-site. Keep doing your backup into the cloud, backup on tapes. I remember many, many years ago, and I'm revealing my age now, we used to do backups and take it off and take it into the bank, because the bank at the time was the safest place to put it in their vault, and we put our tapes in there. But backup. Keep doing your backup. Restrict the application access across the network. Restrict the application accesses across the internet files and file sharing. You know that the Mac does not have any other format where you can actually plug in your USB or any one of those other external devices. It obviously makes sure the file sharing is limited to an extent. You can extend it if you go to the iStore and buy you all of those accessories and peripherals, but originally the box standard one doesn't have that. Thirdly, allow only approved applications where possible. Only allow approved applications when possible. Fourthly, as a mitigating strategy, remove local admin rights from standard users. Please, very, very important. Remove local administration rights from standard users. And a standard user is a Windows workstation, it's a remote user, it's a Mac user, it's that user that comes in as a guest user. Remove admin rights from standard users. Fifthly, elevate privileges when needed. In other words, enforce minimal level of user rights. Give them the lowest clearance level possible just to allow them to do their job. Give them the lowest possible to allow them to do their job. And the common threats that will come through is malicious email phishing, the vulnerable remote systems, the abuse of trust relationship, the misconfiguration of cloud services. So do those things. Protect the backup file from within a security solution. Check your endpoints, the lowest level entry, there in the reception area where the Wi-Fi is available. It's an endpoint. Make sure you know who's actually accessing there. The least privileged attacks at endpoint. Use what we call what is ransomware cyber criminals do. There's way back then when we studied computer science, it was the mother and child relationship. They use the child process attack, cyber criminals. They use the child process. So in other words, the one with the most vulnerable, but the least knowledgeable in that respect. And I'm not saying our users are not knowledgeable, but our users are sometimes vulnerable if they do not get updated malware and phishing training. And credential detections. Browse regularly the credentials of all of your user community. Look at your estate on a regular basis to know exactly what are the privileges that's been allocated to them, who has got most rights to some of the applications, and check those credentials on a regular basis. Those are some of the big mitigating factors that I believe is important.
And people, when there's a lot of emails that are flying around, transport.co.za, as if it's coming from government, if it does not have a gov.za, people must not click into it and say, here's a tender.
Very important. That is an old trick of phishing. They use a lookalike. In some instances, they even our banks. You will think this is your banker, or this is an email received from your bank that asks you for your ID number. Your bank will not ask you for your ID number or your card number or your PIN number. They won't do that. But some people at their lowest and at their most vulnerable or weakest point will provide that information and think nothing of it.
Yeah. we'll go to a jingle quickly, and come back and wrap up. I've got one or two things that I need to tell you about Rodney. I'm sure he's asking himself also what, but it's coming.
Okay.
Wow. Okay. Now, I'm sure people are asking themselves, how do we get hold of Rodney? Rodney is accessible, very accessible. Rodney is an entrepreneur or technopreneur now. He offers consulting services to any organization, from public sector to private sector. He is there. He's available. He's got the mileage. He's one of those people that did not wake up yesterday and says they've got the skill to consult. He knows, he's done it. So Rodney is going to share with us how can people engage with him. I'm sure you people that are listening or people that are going to listen through our social network and hear him talking are going to say, what do we do immediately? I think immediately Rodney is going to tell you that one of the things that are critical that he can offer you is actually cyber audit.
Yes. Thank you very much.
You need a person like him who's going to tell you what you've got, what you don't have, what you need to have, and how soon you need to have it.
Fantastic.
Otherwise, you'll be a statistics. One day when we're talking, me and Rodney here and other people, will make you an example and say, so-and-so was hit by a Trojan virus or whatever it is, a ransomware, and they ask for cryptocurrency for payment. But so he's going to tell you. One of the things as well that I need to share with you that Rodney mentioned and is that he's an advisor of Picta. Picta has got many advisors, and Rodney brings the most critical skill that we need, private sector experience into Picta. He offered to offer a lot of things and assist us with a lot of things within Picta. One of them being one of the key points in talking to anyone who wants to give us support in terms of grant or ESD funding or whatever it is, and Rodney knows the story. So there he is. If he says I'm lying, he's going to say live, but that's what he offers, except giving advice. And thank you to Rodney. He's one of those people who run an extra mile as an advisor. You must remember, advisors are volunteers in the organization because we are a non-profit organization. But when we discussed that this is the first day, this is the first show of the radio station, he lifted his hand and said, I'm available immediately. Let's go and have a discussion. Okay? Rod, straight to you.
Thank you very much, Sonabo. Much appreciated. Thank you very much, everybody. For those of you that are listening, like I said, it's available on Facebook and on YouTube. You can engage with me. It is very simple. It's rodney@picta.org. I repeat, it's Rodney, RODNEY, at Picta, PAICTA.org. Or you can actually engage me through my LinkedIn profile, which is HTTPS. Very important. You don't click on a URL or a link if there's no S on it, because the S means it's a secure link. So https://linkedin.com/in/Rodney Dekoch, RODNEYDEKOCH. And those are the two connections, we can engage with that. If you want to, you can also engage directly with Sonabo. Sonabo Mdwaba is the chairperson of PITA, and he can actually lead and engage with you as well. And yes, if you want to have a cyber assessment, just to say, listen, guys, listen, Rodney, can you come in and just tell me what is my risk vulnerabilities? How exposed am I? I can tell you when you will be hit. If I look at your systems, if I look at your policy, I look at your users, I look at your landscape, I look at your real estate, and I'll tell you, you will have at least another 21 days or so, and you'll be hit with a cyber criminal or cyber attack. So please engage Rodney at pita.org, and I'll gladly communicate with you and share with you. And for those of you that actually need access to the cyber report, the Interpol Cyber Assessment Report of October 2021, it was actually written for Africa, but it includes extensively South Africa and some of the South African companies that were hit and that actually suffered breaches on their systems. You're welcome to actually connect with me as well. Thank you very much. Thanks, Sonabo.
On a parting shot, I think for people who want PITA to assist with 0-rated courses in cybersecurity, Python, C++, Linux, you can follow us on our social media. In this case, it's your Twitter. Twitter is PITA_Africa. Then Facebook, you can go look for PITA on Facebook. You'll find us there. Most of the time, we advertise which courses we're offering for whatever month that it is. We normally take about 20, 30 people in a go and finish that program and start another one. Thank you very much. Thank you for being with us. If you end up listening to this recording later on, thank you for spending time to listen to PITA content. We will continue sharing with professionals like Rodney and many others to come. We thank you. Have a blessed afternoon. Thank you very much,
everybody.
Rod,
Thank
thanks.
you so much. Thanks a lot. Ciao. Bye-bye.